Shamini, for the introduction. And first of all, a big thank you for the invitation. And I hope you will give me the screen sharing rights. Hope you will give me the. Thank you. Thank you. Interesting, important area that you have decided to embark on in discussion. So I thought I will capture the issue from a Sri Lankan point and also highlighting the global issue because we all live in one place and but we do matter wherever we are from. So renewable energy for a sustainable future. What you see in front of you is a picture of quite interesting in my view. It's just what I took at Norachole. You see the huge coal yard, which are destined to for a combustion process and then to generate lots of energy, electricity primarily, and to help us to do a lot of things. And we have looked at it as probably the cheapest so far, enabling a unit of electricity. Behind that, you also see the wind power systems that's coming in the peninsula in there for Sri Lanka. So many wind power systems have sprung there. So that that's just tapping into the wind energy and giving us what we called as renewable energy. Again, electricity is coming up and we will be using that as well. But you know, there are two differences. I mean, there are a couple of differences in this. We have to understand. Coal has been tried and tested. Wind, of course, is. But the point is the intermittency. You don't get so much the density. And so there are situations that we must understand when we switch from one energy system to another. And energy transitions do not happen overnight. They take time. But today, of course, this has to be accelerated because of another thing. And what is that? I put these three stacks on the side where you see the Norachole, where the emissions are taking place. And these emissions are primarily greenhouse gases. And that's what the problem is. Because of that, while we all agree that in this picture, it's putting the countries, you can look at the interactive map if you visit this data sheet in the Our World in Data. It's very interesting. Over the years, you can play it and see how the countries moved. And per capita energy consumption and GDP per capita, looking at how the economic performance and how much we have been using. So what it means is that if you have energy, if you have access to energy, that your economy basically prospers, or rather you have a chance, chance to do a lot of things. And in the way we just calculate our gross domestic product is summation of goods and services. And whatever we do, we need energy. So if we lack energy, we have an economy that's not exactly thriving, or potentially we have problems. And I suppose you felt it today in a sense that when you lack energy, you can't just get on with the event, right? It's very difficult. So just putting Sri Lanka in the perspective here, you can see that as per the Sustainable Energy Authority, 3rd May, a couple of days back, if you take, we have been using 3.1 gigawatt hours, and the peak demand has been like 2,000 megawatts. Not great, really, right? It shows that how much we are using, demanding, and what sort of activities may be happening on the ground as a result of this availability. You see that, so when you position Sri Lanka, we are positioning ourselves at a very lower end. And so you can see well-developed countries are really at a different point, right? And that means that the relationship between energy availability and the economy. So essentially what we are interested, what we want energy. Because to do things, we need energy. We really do not have, we are not yet bothered. How do we get our energy? That's the moment we found basically see or get something that's easy to use, higher density, and we have switched to that energy system. That's as the raw material and the resource. That's what we have been doing. Of course, when you think on that, you need to now have to see, okay, as for all these economic activities and this consumption of resources, what have we gotten ourselves into over the years? Now, that's another issue that is now basically, in a way, asking us to rethink the way we do things. Now, that's your topic. That's your topic. Renewable energy for a sustainable future. Future is going to come. Whatever we say or not to do, future is going to come. Whether this future is hopefully useful to us, whether that's going to be an area of the space where for us its livability is there, is the big question. So now we have this additional question we need to ask and address while we consume and use quality of, look for quality of life, try to develop the economy and grow the economy and so on. There is this constraint that is now pushing us to rethink and rework. So again, just stressing one point, going back to a very interesting scientist who was won a Nobel Prize, Professor Smalley, who won the Nobel Prize for nanomaterial generation. He actually was looking at how to use nanotechnology, and he identified these problems that are surfacing in the world, society. And he identified, yes, we have a material. So we have this fantastically new material, carbon nanotube. And he saw so many opportunities in using carbon nanotube. Then he also identified these problems that are going to grow with time in society. So he put these things like energy, water, food, environment, poverty, terrorism, disease, education, democracy, population. This list in a random order, just the way it came to his mind. And he kind of took it across many of lectures across US. And later on, with all the feedback and so on, he thought, look, if we have access to energy, we can solve all these problems, right? And that's a kind of like almost a revelation. So you need to work on this energy system. And if you have energy, water is not a problem. We can do a lot of things. If you have energy, we have food. And energy, we can even clean up the environment or do things. So we need energy. But the point is, energy is linked to the environment, right? So there is this interlink that we need to now work on. So it's not just having energy. Now, how do you get your energy to address these issues is now becoming important. So either way, it's important to think that we need energy for whatever we are going to do. And however, in many ways that we are going to solve our problems, the energy is a key ingredient. But we have to work on this, how we get our energy today. And that is for the tomorrow that we want. So I just give these three numbers. 8 billion people. I hope you understand what this 51 means and what this 0 means. So 8 billion population is on planet Earth. And we just kind of crossed to this 8 billion. 51 billion, 51 refers to the tonnage in billion tons, the greenhouse gas emissions that we all are doing. And the challenge today for the survival, for the tomorrow, is we must bring this to 0. That is what we speak about, this net zero challenge. So this is a huge challenge. You can't have transitions fast. But this 0, the reason why is we have to understand, and I'll spend a few minutes on that. So we must bring this 51 billion tons of GHG emission equivalents from multitude of gases, predominantly carbon dioxide, to a 0. So we must do our activities, but we must do that in a net zero mode. Mind you, even though it's net zero, we still have some accumulated stuff we must do something to do with. So that's another challenge that awaits. Zero is good because it will kind of like extend our problem. It will not happen immediately, or rather it will be slightly slower, and we are kind of stop it at this level. So probably we can stop a lot of negative things, reduce a lot of negative things. So zero challenge is being taken. So we speak of because of this climate disaster. And taking Sri Lanka, for instance, we are talking about 22 million people. We have 20 million metric tons of greenhouse gas emissions. So it's almost like 1 right, per year. Okay, we also have looked at net zero. Of course, our target for net zero is not like a country that's producing quite a lot or a rich economy. But nevertheless, being all living in one planet, we all have to do our bit. And what I think is switching to renewables is good for our economy as well. So it's not just saving our skin. It's good for our economy because we will be using resources that we ourselves have and then ensuring our economies are aligned to what we have. And so that's quite common sense when you stop to think about it, right? So this is the challenge. Now, just to remind you, as we speak, you can look at the status. You know, from Sri Lanka, the Antarctica is just behind us from the south coast. And we have what we have now named as the Doomsday Glacier, right? The Doomsday Glacier, which is actually the Thwaites Glacier, is melting, is breaking. And this is the size of like Texas, US state of Texas. And if this melts and it's happening as we speak, it's been happening for some time, and it's getting accelerated, which is so unfortunate. And it's all due to this climate change. And I don't think many argue on that. Whatever is, physically, we are seeing this taking place. And when this is finally dissolved, or rather the solids becomes liquid, our sea level will rise by 2 feet, that's the estimate. Now, just imagine for Sri Lanka, when we get another 2 feet sea level rise, you can imagine what's going to happen, including for our paddy, because we are going to have some more additional saltwater intrusion over the rivers, and we are going to have problems. But this is happening. We can't stop it. Unfortunately, we have done things in the past which are going to this. So we may as well think what to do next. But we must also take action to do things differently if the future is not going to be even more worse. So this is a challenge right now. From a Sri Lankan point, it's going to be an experience because we didn't really contribute to this problem, but we are going to suffer from this. Again, when you look at the most recent type carbon dioxide value, we see this 421 ppm, right? And that's serious because last time the world was around 400 ppm, was about 3 million years ago. Now we are now crossing this 400 in 2013. Now you can see we have moved from these values quite rapidly from March 2022, 418, March 2023, 421. All this data because somebody in 1950, some individual, Kipling, actually took trouble to measure carbon dioxide and record it. Now that is what you call good stewardship, right? Decent researcher thinking something that useful to do and contributing. And what he did that day is now helping us to understand. And so this is the famous Keeling curve, right? It's a Keeling curve. So this number is also rising, and we have been discussing about a tipping point. Whether it's at one point, actually 420 was a tipping point, right? If we pass this value, the world is not going to be the same again, and we do not have an ability to reverse it. But today we speak of like 450 and so on. It's all through models. Anyway, something to be aware of, and this is the stress. So we have to work on this. Looking at all these models and then working together for countries to look at how to bring this curve back, right? So to reduce this temperature jump is taking it down. So we know how it has gone through over the years. In the industrial era, we have gone about 1 degree Celsius, and we are thinking what to do if not to have a 1.5 degree Celsius rise. And this is chaos if this is going to be. A lot of us agree in a sense to this. Still, there are some very strong science, and some scientists who not directly agree. But by and large, today, the scientific consensus is that this is an issue. And we must do it today, as we didn't do it yesterday, right? So now the answer is we need energy. We need energy for transport. We need energy for buildings. We need energy for our industry. So we sometimes only think about switching on the TV, putting the lights on, using fuel for the vehicle as what is needed. Oh no, there's much more energy needed to do other things, right? So it's interesting, of course, when you go back, when these scenarios developed and people move through quality of life by new inventions and so on, they were using renewable resources. So it's all changed when coal was obviously there, but oil came about 1860s. But we really lapped into, we really focused on oil because that's such a wonderful find. And so much of resources in that 1 liter of liquid, so many available, so much power and energy and potential. Our medicine comes from that crude oil today, right? So we take this for granted. But now we need to switch. So what I'm just giving some like examples. Early days when they used renewable resources. So our challenge today is to do things, go back into that era in a sense, not in the way that they do this, but in a much, much more different way. So without losing our quality of life. But of course, we must get rid of our unsustainable ways of consumption, for sure. We have a lot of unsustainable consumption patterns and unnecessary consumption patterns and unproductive consumption patterns. And those things probably have to go, for sure, right? And that's part and parcel. So you can see in industry and building, when Ford did his car, Model T one, that came from vegetable material. The plastics was bioplastics. And today we are desperately again trying to go back into bioplastics. We have to. We have to. So similarly, renewable energy is like that. We need our energy. We need lots of energy. But now we have to move into renewable energy. We can't use that old forms. The fossil fuels, we must put a stop. And that doesn't mean we have to wait till it goes to zero, because we can't wait to go to zero. We need to do the switch now, and we must be champions for the transition. Today, we also speak of our food systems need energy. Our fertilizer comes from energy. There are energy guzzling in the process industry, right? And so today we have innovations. Now, this is an example of last year and in year before, energy innovation, food innovation, which has now, we are looking at the carbon dioxide footprint of this. So this is potato milk. So this became a European Food Innovation Award for the year before. So producing milk and a drink, and you can use it in multiple ways coming from potatoes, right? And you are now comparing the footprint with milk and so on. And we now try to see zero to dairy, because we see in so many other ways that non-dairy milk is better in our food systems. So you can see examples. We either reach out to the past, or we now go for inventions and innovations to get rid of this carbon dioxide problem. And you can see from Sri Lanka that we definitely have resources and potential. Remember that we have how many megawatts that we use, our peak demand. So this has been assessed by multiple parties, primarily Sustainable Energy Authority. You can see that dedicated plantations, 2,400 megawatt electric, agriculture residues, 2,300, things like biogas, very useful. Organic fraction of MSW, 338, small hydro, 1,000, offshore wind, huge, 24,000. Of course, there are challenges. Geothermal, 100 megawatts electric. So you can see that potential is there. And here again, I see things like sewage and stuff has not been taken, which is a fantastic resource. We are just pumping into the ocean and wasting it. So they are again untapped resources that we have. So you can see that we have potential, we have resources, but we must have technology. We must push ourselves to do this transition. Transitions, as I said, it's not happening fast enough. And the history also indicative that these energy transitions do not take place overnight. But today, we have been pushed to do this transition. So that's very important that we need to work on. So again, something that I would say is that from a science and so on, we do have lots of resources in Sri Lanka, that we have one of the best resources in Sri Lanka. I normally tell that Sri Lanka is a treasure island for nanotechnology. So we have these raw materials, super clean in the sense of very high purity, and some are like world's best in terms of graphite. And these are today wonder materials that you can use for so many things. For solar cells, our super quality quartz is just waiting to be used. Unfortunately, we don't take decisions. Super caps from our carbon, and carbon even from coconut shell carbon, which is again a super carbon, right? So batteries, graphite, we have enough raw materials to do this. So you can see things that are actually now starting to happen in Sri Lanka, like RGO production. So we have the best quality raw materials to drive this energy transition as well, right? From our point. And today you will see in a short while, at the moment, these batteries are on the road. Test runs are happening with, you can see long life with graphene inclusion coming from Sri Lankan graphite, and Sri Lankan science is now on the roads. So we have these situations, and it's interesting to think that Sri Lanka had the world's first renewable energy village. I remember visiting this in 1983. That kind of changed myself as well when I saw it. And of course, biogas was the star renewable resource for this product, and was powering about small grid, in a sense, electricity for about 40 plus 200 households, and gas grid, and wind, solar, all sorts of renewable energies were used here. And this was a demonstration village done by United Nations Environmental Program. So sadly, we lost our way, and we never took these lessons to the next level. And so now this is defunct. Now, of course, we are again waking up to the fact that we need to do in our own way, even to survive sometimes in the market. So we have the world's first net zero apparel factory. We also had the world's first green factory for apparel. And we, in Sri Lanka, actually, in the apparel sector, we have the most high per capita textile factories of green credentials in Sri Lanka. So a fantastic contribution, and that's renewable energy driven, and a lot of other things as well. So you see scenarios like this happening. And the point, as I said, it is when you have this technology and potential, we must work. We must build technology. We must introduce them and accelerate the transition. It's not a time to think, okay, what's the cost benefit? Because we know this transition need to happen. If the cost benefit, these are not usually the benefits that are taken in the extended externalizing cost. External cost, we actually use in direct thinking, the direct cost benefit analysis. If you wait like that, we will take a long time to do this. So, and it won't be productive, because as I said, we are facing problems right now. So we need to look at from Sri Lanka, we need to do this. And we have the potential, we can do this, but develop talent to do. So this is University of Jaffna, where we have a floating solar power system. At Moratuwa, we have the first smart grid system and the research lab. And these things also, these outputs are enabling more and more renewables to be picked up by the grid. So because sometimes you hear the scenario, okay, there's a level for renewables to capture, and these development, smart grids, will actually enable more renewables to come in, because the technology is developing for that. And green hydrogen, something that we have been pushing for Sri Lanka, and because it is sun and wind driven, we started working on this when we were looking at excess wind electricity coming from the Mana region. And they're not looking at just sending it to the grid and powering to watch TV and so on, but to have the industry. So just imagine the hydrogen economy is sun, wind, and water. And we have all three. We definitely have sun and water, and wind in some scale. So you can see first example of the largest the machine plane on the using hydrogen electricity from Alaska. So these examples are there, and there's huge amount of research and work on hydrogen taking place. The issue is we know about hydrogen. We have the hydrogen know-how, we have the hydrogen safety knowledge also. So it's a matter of the energy system coming from the renewable side that will have our blue hydrogen, green hydrogen, because we have been having gray hydrogen and brown hydrogen and so on from coal and oil. Sapukaskandarans has hydrogen. Norachole needs hydrogen. You have gray hydrogen and so on. So you have been, so knowledge of hydrogen use is there. So, but we can transform ourselves into a hydrogen economy. So this is another interesting, very important area that Sri Lanka can explore. And if we do this, you can see that the resource base we have completely, we are going emission free, because once you have a combustion process for hydrogen, what we get is water, right? So the energy for splitting water has to be coming from renewables. So that's the take. We have these examples like in other places, the transport sector being converted, the rail, the road transport with biogas. So finally, we have so much to do. We have so much to do, but we need to do it. And at this stage, we are only going to suffer because of the action. But let us see now, when that happens, the economy suffer. But when we bring everything from outside, we have to have a foreign exchange issue as well. So we have a lot of resources, and the need of the time demands renewable switching. And having that resource, we must use our technology, and we must develop technology, we must adopt technology and bring this transition ourselves for our benefit. And that's very important. So David Attenborough, famed environmentalist, said that at once, how could I look at my grandchildren in the eye and say, I knew about this and I did nothing? So this is an awareness. I just showed you the emergency that's taking place right now. The need is there, seriously, across the planet. But we still seems to be doing completely wrong, because the models indicate we are going still in the wrong direction. We are not doing what we should be doing. So at least I hope I made some sensitizing your minds with respect to what's the need, why we need to do this. And again, from our point, what we can do and what we have to do this transition. So let us be innovative as well in this and bring this transition. Thank you.
That was an informative session, Professor Ajith. Thank you very much. And to everyone who has joined with us today, now's your chance to ask away questions and clarify your doubts, if you have any, regarding these aspects. Hello. Yes, go ahead.
So the question is, so what are some of the modern ways of reducing the carbon footprint? As Hausa explained, they said they're organizing projects at the Jaffna University and so on, and at the Norachole plant as well. So considering the 21st century and the modern technology, how can we reduce the carbon footprints in an innovative way? Thank you.
Well, the simple answer is when you bring renewables and renewable resources into either industry, processes, and our energy base in general, you are reducing your carbon footprint, because it's when you use fossil fuels, which is essentially carbon, and then you start emitting carbon dioxide and the other greenhouse gases. So, you have this issue with use of non-renewable resources to power the energy system that is contributing to this carbon footprint. So get rid of that, and you're well on your way to do it. Otherwise, other way, because anyway you need the energy. So we must do this transition. So opt for renewables. So in a very simple way, it's like Going to a home and looking at, instead of your LPG, can we do with biogas? I know it's not that easy, little tough, you need to spend time, but that's an option. So immediately you are becoming carbon neutral.
Yes, thank you. That answered my question. Thanks.
Do we have any more questions?
I have a question. It is very much talked about nuclear power, and like some people have doubts about that nuclear power. Like if we have nuclear power in a country like Sri Lanka, a small country, like it can lead to a very big disasters. So what's your take on it? And can we as a small country go to a nuclear power plant?
Nuclear power is actually being promoted as an opportunity or an option for having this climate change issue, because it's not carbon emitting, or there's no emissions on that nature, no greenhouse gas emission of that sort. The question with nuclear, it's very interesting. There will be, if you look at some Bill Gates write-ups recently, he actually spent his own money and developed a much more safe, a much more efficient nuclear system, which should coming up on stream probably in about a couple of years' time. It's on its way. The situation with nuclear power energy for Sri Lanka, again, we have a resource for that. We have for thermal breeders. Sri Lanka has thorium. Of course, you have to go through the fuel cycle. It's not just getting the sand from there and then just using it. You need to have the fuel cycle, which actually India has done it. Entire fuel cycle in indigenous terms in India. And so they have run their breeder reactors. They have the full spectrum of the nuclear reactors. You see, the time period for setting up a nuclear system is somewhat high. I remember some time back when Sri Lanka was planning nuclear, Moratuwa University started about 10 years ahead, a master's in nuclear engineering, right? And interestingly, I too went to do my postgraduate thinking about nuclear engineering, because nuclear energy, as it was a little favorite when I was learning. However, the scenario is that about these gestation times, long times, we have other options now, one we can do better with from Sri Lankan point, because you have to take so much of investments, so much of security systems in place, and adhering to standards and so methods of inspection, all sorts of things. I suppose that the way that we want it, the time period that we want this energy, nuclear is not giving us that option, right? So that's an issue to me. Though from a climate change point and so on, the nuclear energy is an option, because it's not going to contribute to that. And we have a quite decent energy density once you start a nuclear system. And of course, the systems are also coming smaller. We have systems coming up, available. So I suppose that option is there. But to me, what I see is, why also have this coupled risk and all the precautions that you need to take in association with a nuclear reactor, when we have much different, more benign, environmentally benign and friendly other renewable resources available. So I have not been able to answer that question to me to switch to nuclear energy on that. I see the others are much more potentially useful and risk-free.
Thank you, sir.
All right, that was a wonderful answer, sir. Do we have any more questions?
I would actually recommend looking at what Bill Gates have been doing. It's a very fascinating insight into the nuclear energy development, what he did as a private individual using his private capital and looking at research and so on. It gives an idea about how do you develop an energy system, technology. There's some lessons to be learned from that.